Okay, we're good. Barring a few technical difficulties as we entered the episode here this afternoon, we'd like to welcome you. This is the afternoon of the first Friday here in the month in February, and our episode here of the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles is being sponsored today by TetraTech, and it contains a paid promotional sponsorship ad by TetraTech that we'll show shortly. And our Chronicles podcast is a one-of-a-kind podcast that is converses with passionate, community-minded partners. It highlights outstanding reclamation and community cleanup efforts, showcases some stream improvement successes, and shares emergent ideas and technologies to reclaim and remediate our legacy abandoned mines. I'm your host, Bobby Hughes, with the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ann Damon, from the Western Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, and our special guest here today, Eric Cavazza with Tetra Tech, that we'll shortly get into some of his background here this afternoon.
Yeah, and first we just want to thank the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds for underwriting our first 12 episodes of the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles podcast. I think we've had about 6 or 7 episodes so far, so we're halfway through. And all of the previous channels. And we're hopeful that this live streaming format offers personal interviews and discussing timely topics related to abandoned mine reclamation will engage our audiences at a whole new level. So we encourage anybody who joins us here live to enter your questions and comments into the chat box or comment section of wherever you're joining us from.
Good. Well, with that, Ann, I'd like to introduce our guest here, Mr. Eric Cavazza, and I'm going to give a little background here on his really extensive resume and the work that he's been involved with in abandoned mine reclamation for much of his career. So let me give you a little introduction to Eric here. He's got over 40 years experience in coal mine reclamation and in the treatment of abandoned mine drainage. And since January of 22 here, most recently, he's served as a vice president of the legacy coal reclamation sort of department in Tetra Tech's Pittsburgh office. And at Tetra Tech, he manages a group of technical staff, including engineers and geologists, environmental scientists, and other technical staff working to solicit and complete mining, abandoned mine reclamation, and mine drainage treatment and abatement projects. And prior to joining Tetra Tech, he served as the Pittsburgh office field office director for the federal Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, that we all well know as OSMRE. We don't want to forget the regulatory environment side of OSM, but he's been there for a year in 2021, and he oversaw the coal mine regulatory and abandoned mine land programs in Ohio, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. And from 85, we go back a little bit until the end of 2020, he was employed by the Department of Environmental Protection's Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation. And he served many roles during his 36 years with BAMR, including 17 of those as the design section chief in Evansburg, and the last 9 years as director of the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Land Program. And during his time as the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Land Program's coordinator or director role, he was actively involved in the National Association of Abandoned Mine Lands program that we call NALM, serving in all the officer seats that culminated in him becoming the president in 2015. And then with the Interstate Mining Compact Commission, he was involved with as well. Mr. Cavazza has a Bachelor in Science degree in Mining and Engineering and a Master of Engineering in Environmental Engineering, both from Penn State. And he's a member of the Society of Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration, SME, and the American Society of Reclamation Sciences. We call it ASHRS for short. He's a registered professional engineer in 5 states, including Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Indiana, and Kentucky. and some personal details. And I'm sure Eric will get to go into this a little bit. Both he and his wife are originally from Punxsutawney, which we all know if you've been watching the news. The good old Phil saw his shadow, and we're going to get 6 more weeks of this. And Eric, I don't know, we might have to place some of that blame on you for, kind of being born and raised there in Punxsutawney. So you have to do something about that groundhog.
Not on me.
And they lived outside of Indiana for most of their adult lives for about the last 36 years. And they have 2 sons that are now 31 and 34. Both of whom are Penn State petroleum and natural gas engineers. And both of his sons have moved to Houston, Texas area for their jobs right now. And they have 2 grandchildren, both granddaughters currently the age of 2, 26 months and 3.5 months. And at the end of 2022, Eric and his wife moved down to Texas to be closer to their family and their kids and grandchildren. And the TetraTech business unit has like 4 main offices, Pittsburgh, Houston, up in Buffalo, and also Salt Lake City. That kind of allows him to work remotely and still go into the office when he needs to, like much of us are doing these days. They kind of like to hike and go travel and go biking. And Eric occasionally golfs. I don't know what his handicap is with his sons, but he spends a lot of time with them and his grandkids. And we could talk about golf maybe a little bit too and our swings here. So with that, I'll pass it back to Ann to talk to Eric a little bit more.
Yeah, what an impressive resume you have there. And so what we like to do first with our guests is let our audience kind of get to know you a little bit better on a personal level. So if you wouldn't mind kind of just telling us, what it was like where you grew up. Do you have any personal connections to mining? How did you end up with a career in abandoned mine reclamation? Maybe who's your family? Tell us a little bit more about your move to Texas and all that.
Sure. Thanks, Ann. As you noted, I grew up in Punxsutawney, PA. I lived there until my wife and I got married in my early 20s. And we moved to Indiana, PA at that time. And I spent most of my adult life there in Indiana, PA. Growing up in Punxsutawney, I had 4 sisters and me, so I was the only boy. So none of my sisters were in mining or mine reclamation. I know you asked the question about what's my personal connection to mining or abandoned mine reclamation. None of my direct family worked in mining or abandoned mine reclamation. I did have a brother-in-law that sold mining tools for Kennebec, worked out of Bedford, PA for a long time, and then went out west at one point and sold that stuff out there. But coming out of high school, I kind of excelled at math and physics and all those great subjects, and it seemed like engineering was the field I needed to go after. So I went to Penn State and looked at a bunch of different majors, and for whatever reason, mining seemed to be something that interested me. I knew a lot of people growing up that either worked in mines or worked in the surface mines, both people I went to school with and older folks too. So there was a lot of mining going on at that time, especially surface mining where I lived and around where I lived. So it seemed like a good path to go down. So that's how I ended up going into mining engineering at Penn State. I thought I'd be working for a mining company. In fact, Consol Energy, they were a consolidation coal company then. They gave me a pretty good scholarship and funded a lot of my education. But by the time I got to graduation, the coal market had taken a downturn and there was no opportunity to go to work for them. So I worked for a consultant for a while doing mining permits and reserve studies and other things related to coal. And then I learned about an opportunity with Pennsylvania DEP. At that time, they were DER. But I went, applied, and I got hired to work there in Ebensburg for the Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation. As you noted, my wife is also from Punxsutawney, Elizabeth. She was Mancuso, goes by Betsy. I have two sons, Matthew and Michael. And you said they're both married, Matthew to Kelly and Michael to Monica. Matthew has two daughters. There are grandchildren, Madison and Isabella. And between when I started talking to you and now, I learned I'm going to have a third granddaughter. Michael and Monica are expecting a baby at the end of July or beginning of August. So the brood is growing. So they're a lot of fun. I'm glad we're close by and get to spend a lot of time with them. And, I think we help them out too. So I don't think I have anything else to say about that. Like I said, I went into work for Pennsylvania DEP, and didn't know how long I would be there, and heck, it ended up being a really long time. So
yeah, in public service.
Yeah.
I can remember, Eric, back when I was interning for the state. I was working at the Hawk Run District Mining Office back in like 1993 to 95. And some of the places I used to have to go into Western Pennsylvania to do some monitoring were around Punxsutawney and some other areas west of State College. And I recall going to a tipple operation down along the river. And it was right around Punxsutawney. Do you know which one I'm referring to? Were there many other tipples out there too? But there was one in particular I went to that I was always told by the folks in the office, when you bring the truck back, you better take it to the car wash because there's going to be so much clay and liver on it, is what we called it then, that I had to clean up the vehicles before I could even bring it back. And I had to stop off in Phillipsburg before going back to the office in Hawk Run. Are you familiar with that area down there to know which one I'm talking about?
There were tipples. There was lots of tipples around. There was one in the Lear that was active for quite a while. P&N had a tipple out on the, I don't know if it was directly on the West Branch or off the West Branch, but in the McGee's Mills area. And there were other tipples around.
Yeah.
Certainly there was a lot more then than there is now, but there were quite a few of them.
Could you explain what maybe a tipple is in Western PA terms to us out here? Because I think they're different than our what we would have as a coal breaker. But is that what it was, the difference between the tipple and the like a coal breaker that we typically see in the anthracite?
Well, most coal tipples were there to load coal. The coal was brought to the tipple usually by truck, and then it was loaded onto trains from the tipple. And sometimes there were cleaning plants associated with the tipple, but the cleaning plant cleaned the coal and then put it in a stockpile, and then it got loaded onto trains from the tipple. But the tipple's primary purpose was to load the coal onto something that had a lot more capacity and could take the coal to a power plant or a steel mill or coke plant or wherever it was going.
Okay. So that's the difference between out here with a coal breaker, that we would have a retail pocket, and the retail pocket that was underneath a breaker could have 5 or 6 different trucks that could come in based on the size of the coal, and then they would load up the trucks, or they would have conveyors that would shoot the coal back into the rail siding, and then go out on rail. So I thought it'd be something to clarify just between these different types of operations that we see in Eastern and Western Pennsylvania. So thank you for sort of explaining that. We talked about your bio, kind of only scratches the surface of your career and your accomplishments that you have. And we saw in your most recent resume that, your expertise is in mining and reclamation. And that's kind of a notable understatement, we think, over the years that we've worked with you. And over the last just even 40 years or so, you've kind of managed every aspect of reclamation projects, from design, assessment, implementation, to budgeting, staffing, and even instruction and training your staff and or other folks. And you've been the director of BAMR, served on these national associations like NALP. You and I have testified before Congress over the years, and you've likely published and have your name in hundreds of documents and research papers and, things that we know many of our colleagues and mentors have done before us. And I'd like to sort of venture to say that there's a few people that have a different sort of skill sets. And from our understanding, that when you were considered for the director position, eventually for the Office of Surface Mining, that you've gained all this work through public service, and even doing that has its pros and its cons. And I wonder if you could talk about that public service career that you have before you've sort of transitioned here recently back into the private sector, and if there's just a few lessons learned, and maybe some projects that might have stood out that helped you along the way that you're most proud of.
Sure. Thanks, Bobby. I began working for the Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation in 1985, and I went to work in the investigation section. And that group responded to inquiries from the public or from officials about potential problems that they felt were related or could be related to an abandoned mine. So I had to go out, meet them, investigate those problems, and determine, one, if they were in fact mining related, and then two, if they were, could we do anything under the criteria outlined in SMCRA, the Surface Mine Control and Reclamation Act. Shortly after I started there too, Pennsylvania undertook an effort to update and add to its AML inventory. They had an AML inventory, but it wasn't complete. So I spent the better part of 2 years inventorying abandoned mine land sites in Fayette County for Pennsylvania. And I also assisted with some inventory work in some other counties, particularly Washington, Westmoreland, Jefferson, and Indiana. Others were in the lead in those counties, but I helped out with some of that. So I got to see a lot of things. I got to see just about every type of abandoned mine problem that was out there. I got to see a lot of the western part of the state. I got to meet a lot of folks. I got to hear a lot about what concerned them the most, and what they wanted to see addressed. And then I got to learn a lot about all the requirements under SMCRA. What was required for a site to be eligible? What were the priorities? What could we do? What couldn't we do? And early on, I kind of developed a mindset that I was there to help people, and if I could help them, I wanted to help them. Obviously, you guys are aware Pennsylvania has a gigantic legacy of AML and AMD problems from past coal mining. So the funding that was available to deal with them, in plain terms, was minuscule compared to the problem. The other thing I did is when I met with all these folks, I always wanted to be honest. So, if they showed you a problem, I wanted to make it clear it wasn't going to be reclaimed in the next week. It took time for these projects to go through planning and development and come up high enough on a priority list to get funded. And they were all in competition with all the other problems that were out there that people were reporting. So it was always a balancing act. But I learned how to, interface with the public and make sure that I was telling them what we could and couldn't do, and tried to keep the line of communication open. So as time went on, I would update them on where their projects were and when they may make it, all the way to reclamation. After a few years in investigations, I went into doing project development work, and that's when we contacted landowners. We developed the scope of work for reclamation. We did that eligibility determination. We identified what resources were on the site that may need permits and other things. So again, I got to talk to a lot of landowners. I got to hear what was concerning to them, what they wanted to see, and what they felt the impacts of these sites were. And from there, I moved into the design group, which I was in probably the longest part of my career there in Cambria. I had a group of engineers and CAD folks. Well, when I started, they did drafting by hand with, the old ink and Mylar and Leroy sets, but we converted to CAD during my time. And, started doing the designs electronically, which was a big move. It took a while to transition to that. But again, I worked on all kind of projects. Shortly after I went to design, the Title IV, which is the AML portion of SMACRA, was reauthorized, and it allowed for the first time for some of the money to be spent on AMD. I had heard, from many people over the years, AMD was something they wanted to see addressed, but very early in the program, it wasn't allowable. It was considered a low priority, just environmental degradation. So we couldn't focus on it, but I certainly heard a lot about it. So I opted to go back to school part-time, graduate school. I went back to Penn State and I got my master's degree in environmental engineering. I focused mostly on water treatment and as much as I could on mine drainage treatment. During that time, I was part of the original group that set up the AMD set-aside program for Pennsylvania in 1992. And a lot of Pam Milivek. We hired her in 1993 to take over the program. And again, when you looked at the amount of funding that we had, it was minuscule compared to the problem. So Pennsylvania has 5,000 AMD impacted streams, and we were putting $1 or $2 million a year away to try to address it. So we did work on a number of projects, and at least we started getting a lot of PR about AMD during that period of time. After being in design for 17 years, and I had a list somewhere, but I think that I actually oversaw the design of about 250 some AML projects in those 17 years from Cambria. We didn't have the funding like there is today at that time, so we couldn't do as much work as what is possible currently. But still, it was a lot of AML projects. I got to see a lot of different things. In 2010, I moved up to become the manager of the Cambria office, which I was in that role for about 2 years, overseeing the whole district office, which covered all of Western PA. And then from there, I moved up to become the director of BAMR in January of 2012 and was there till the end of 2020. A few highlights and things I learned is I was in charge of setting up the first AMD set-aside program guidelines and ran a bunch of public meetings and took a lot of input from folks. I know that that was kind of tough. There was a lot of perspectives on how that money should be spent and what the priority should be and what was considered a risky, everybody was trying to push the envelope of AMD treatment and trying to build bigger, better passive systems that could treat everything. And of course, you're probably aware there were a lot of systems that were built that failed. And so we were trying to be a little more conservative and make sure the money was going toward, things that would be successful. But I did get to interact with a lot of people during that time and a lot of folks that are involved in the AML AMD community, of which it's a small group, and it's a group that's most of the people that have been in it a long time, and you see the same faces. They may move around to a different location, but they're still doing the same thing.
Can you explain about the set aside, what it went from to today? We know that it used to be 10%. Now we're taking maybe up to 30% of our annual allocation. Where are we at today that that's money is going to a specific fund or the Stream Act is something that we've talked about more recently here, that we're hoping to see a lot more of the dedication of those funds go towards future operation and maintenance of new treatment systems. Is that where it stands right now? That migration from 10 to 30, or is the state, taking different amounts these days?
Well, it moved from the opportunity to take a maximum of 10 up to a maximum of 30 in 2006. So during the time I was director, we could take up to 30%, and we tried to take as much as we could and put into the set aside, weighing all the other priorities that were out there. The infrastructure bill passed in 2021 allowed for that to continue at 30% and actually to put it into a fund that would be available after the funding runs out. I mean, obviously, the folks that are there now can probably give you a lot more details than I can, but it's my understanding that they have been setting aside the 30% into the AMD set-aside fund for both new projects and to operate and maintain the ones that are built.
Good.
So a lot more funding. I mean, I think based on the amount of funding they've been getting the last few years, they can put 60 or 70 or 75 million into the set-aside fund. So that's a lot more money than probably we had for the first 15 or so years combined.
Yeah, it has. Ann, do you want to? Yeah, I see a question
Yeah.
came in through the chat. I just saw it, but I didn't get a chance to read it. Do you want to take that?
Oh, sorry. Yep, I've been forgetting to look at the chat, and yeah, we've.
That's okay.
Let's see. Yeah. All right. So we have a question from John Richardson. Would the proposed treatment plant for the Old Forge borehole AMD circumvent the need for reclamation projects of the many mine infiltration sites in the Lackawanna Valley? And he goes on, it goes on.
Yeah, I see that he's asking if it's better to stop the water infiltration into the mines. Well, my own view is yes, it's always good to stop the infiltration into the mines if you can do it. Keep the clean water on the surface to the extent you can, but obviously for a variety of reasons you can't fill in all the old pits for, landowners aren't always cooperative. So sometimes you just have to deal with the water where it comes out. The Pennsylvania DEP currently has a scope of work out. I don't know who all they are soliciting from. It would be from their DES 22 consultant list to put together proposals to come up with a plan or several plans to deal with the Old Forge borehole discharge and the Duryea breach or Duryea breach.
Yeah,
so, we'll see.
I think there's going to be a lot of sort of proposals and ideas going forward here in the next maybe 6 months. And there's even some private investment that we're seeing that is looking to address potentially the Old Forge borehole, in addition to what the department is putting out to take a look at what may need to be done up there. And as John has said, if you can reduce some of the water, you're going to cut down on the long-term, not only the long-term operation and maintenance of a scaled treatment system that would need to be put in there to take care of treating the water. You could also, that reduction in flow could help to make the treatment system maybe a little bit smaller. But with the type of volume of flows we're dealing with in the Old Forge borehole, I think the chances are that we're not going to be able to get all the water to the surface before we can look to address that. That could be decades down the road, just even doing the reclamation on the surface in the Lackawanna Valley. And many projects, I think, are on the books to do that in many of the tributaries on either side. But I think for a long time coming, looking at the Old Forge borehole in a situation where it needs to have an active treatment system is probably what we're going to start seeing a lot more proposals coming out here shortly, now that there is this funding available through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act and the IRA funding that's available through the AMD AML program that the state has to take a look at this a whole lot closer.
Yeah, TetraTech did a conceptual design of a treatment plant a couple of years ago, and we were working with a company that was looking at a pumped storage power project there that would use some of the water from the Old Forge borehole and the treated water for the pump storage project. And that may come back around. We'll wait and see. TetraTech,
Yeah.
we'd love to continue to work on that, and we hope to be the selected firm to work on it here going forward.
Okay. I'm going to come back to some of our pre-programmed questions. Hearing you talk about your whole extensive career and all the different aspects of projects that you've overseen and your expertise and things that we didn't actually cover when Bobby was reading your bio, like how knowledgeable you are about policies and the financial management of these large programs. And then one thing that's actually really important to Bobby and I, being from the nonprofit world, we really feel that under BAMR was in this whole new era of public transparency. And we always thought that, you were very approachable. You always shared what BAMR was up to. You came to our meetings and, gave us outlines of the projects you had planned for the coming years, and just really tried to keep the nonprofit and watershed groups informed and included. So we really appreciated that. And it's just, we're so grateful really because it made our work so much easier to know, what the state was up to and to be able to assist you, because that's really what our job is. And we think that too, this legacy has kind of continued after your departure from public service. And it's really kind of become now a part of BAMR's culture. And so those that are were under you that are now in leadership positions also seem to value public transparency and inclusion of NGOs. Can you talk a little bit more about why you felt that was important and the difficulties of making that a reality and should be shared from the public sector into not the nonprofit world? But we really think that was valuable and want to get your advice on continuing that partnership into the future.
Well, sure. Obviously, I'm not there anymore, but when I was there, as I mentioned early in my career, I did a lot of interface with the public and with groups that were concerned or, pushing to get sites reclaimed. So I always like I said, I like to give them the facts and tell them the straight story. I also was a manager very early in my career, so I was in the office a lot, and a lot of calls and from the media and from legislators and the public got routed to me to respond to. And as I mentioned early on, I worked in development, so I learned a lot of the background and the details of the program, so I could explain to people kind of in detail, what qualified, what didn't qualify, and those sorts of things. Over time, I realized I got a lot of the same questions from different people, and I always thought if we could put all this on our website or put it into flyers or brochures, I wouldn't have to spend an hour on the phone telling somebody the same thing all the time. So when I became the director, one of my early priorities was to try to update BAMR's website and incorporate more of this information on the website. Luckily, the department, shortly after I took over, had an initiative to update their whole website, and we got slotted in pretty early because we were willing to work on it to make a lot of changes, put a lot of information on there, put lists of projects, proposed projects coming up, those sorts of things. We put in summaries of the work we did each year and just tried to get that information out there. And of course, the program was going to expire, so people were starting to think we needed to plan for reauthorization. And there's nothing better than to show what you've done that's good and show people what still needs done if you're going to ask for more money, which was what the states needed to do with Congress. And a lot of other things happened during that time. The AML pilot program came out, and it allowed us to spend funding for economic development. And The media office at DEP seemed to take a big interest in that. They made videos of a lot of those early projects whenever they were being announced by the secretary. So all those things, I think, added up, and there was more of a commitment from my folks and from the department in general to distribute this information and let people know what was being done. So I think I had that innate and was born in me to be that way, but luckily I came along at the right time when I could actually do it. And I also realized that to get all these projects done, you need partnerships. The state couldn't do everything on its own. I mean, you know how large the issue is in Pennsylvania, and it's the same in the surrounding states. So I found that when I worked with these groups, they bought into these projects. You know, if we built a passive system somewhere, they kind of took ownership of it. So we didn't have somebody that could go out there and look at it every week, but they did. They lived there. So they became, like I said, they took ownership in the projects, and it just became a good working relationship. It kind of expanded the AML's program's reach to get things done. You would see problems or know about things well before we would, and you'd report them back. And I think just having that open line of communication and transparency was good both ways. And, I'm glad to hear that you felt it was beneficial from your point of view. And I'm glad that we were able to do it, and I'm glad it's continued.
Yeah, Eric, right now we know that the Commonwealth kind of has a process for bidding, and consultant firms and other technical service providers, or even nonprofits for that matter, as subrecipients, to help out our community watershed organizations and our municipalities and areas that are impacted by these legacy issues. Do you know, or from your perspective, do you think that there are too few, or does there need to be more of these types of organizations and firms on the list that you had mentioned before? I don't know if everybody knows what a DES 21 is, but I think that if there's a way to get more money on the ground, maybe there's a need to have more firms involved across the state to be able to be participants in this, so that they can approach the bid-in as well in a way that would allow them to provide more services potentially to a number of the groups that we work with across the state that obviously, we don't have the engineering capacity. We don't have engineers. We don't have designers. We don't have geologists on staff. And that's got to come from these groups that are doing that work on the front end. What's your feeling, and maybe, your advice possibly to other groups to kind of either get on that list, or do you know who they talk to help support what we're trying to do out here?
Well, obviously I'm not at DEP anymore, but I know that they put these solicitations out on a 3 to 5 year basis. It depends. It used to be every 3, and toward the end of my term, it was 5. You could go up to 5 years, and I know, for instance, the DS 22 was a 5-year term contract for any firm that was selected. In terms of whether there's enough of them, I mean, that's kind of up to PADEP. I know they haven't probably pushed the idea of having watershed groups and others use them directly. But that's certainly something I think that's worth exploring more, to see if there's a way to do that and make the whole process more simple and already have firms that were pre-qualified based on the state to work on these types of projects with NGOs and watershed groups, etc. I mean, I know they're probably going to be doing a new solicitation here soon. How long they'll do it and how many firms they're going to select, I mean, that's really up to PADEP. I know the folks that I think that they need to contact in BAMR now would be Michael Pedrick and Christina Peacock Jones, who are both in the Harrisburg BAMR office, and I believe they're overseeing the consultant contracts now. But when they put those, when they issue those, I mean, farms have to apply. So, and it's a pretty significant administrative effort to apply. I mean, I know this, that's the way government works. Nothing's easy. So.
Yeah, well, because it takes that amount of time, it's good to get a head start. It's just like every grant application you got to apply for, it takes time. And I think for those firms that are out there that were looking to support us and us trying to pull projects together as many of our other partners are, we could definitely use the help. And I think just there may be a little bit of a shortage of those groups to be able to help out, and it might make the competition go a little further, and it also might give us lower prices in some of the bidding that's proposed for certain projects. So okay, we'll take that advice, and we'll talk to the department about that on another conversation, maybe with someone else. But thank you for that, Eric. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So something I was actually wondering, and we do like to ask this of all of our guests as well. If you've already told us about a fair number of projects you were involved in throughout the years, but we were wondering if you could share with us maybe one of your most challenging or most rewarding projects that you've worked on throughout your career, or something that was really defining of your kind of like.
Sure. I mean, I worked on a lot of challenging
Personal
projects, a lot of these AML projects. Always, most of them seem to be challenging anymore. But
for 60 years, TetraTech has applied the most advanced science and latest technology to help.
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
I mean, probably one of the most rewarding was the restoration of the Bennett branch up in Elk and Clearfield and Cinnamahoney, Cameron County, excuse me. That was started under the PA Wilds Initiative. And when I first went up there and looked at all the issues, I just thought, there's just too many issues here to deal with. Too many discharges, too much bad water, too much unreclaimed land, too much refuse on the surface. But over a long period of time, we worked with a lot of local residents, grassroots folks. A lot of that land is publicly owned by the Game Commission and by the DCNR Bureau of Forestry. We partnered with Western Pennsylvania Conservancy and Foundation for PA Watersheds. Really, a lot of groups got interested in that project after it got started. And we also included industry. There was some remining and reclamation of refuse piles and other things that was done by industry that cleaned up some problems and also provided us with a source of limestone that we could use for alkaline addition in some of the sites that had really bad acid-forming spoil material. And of course, the federal agencies, OSM and the Corps of Engineers and EPA were all involved. But over about an 8-year period, we reclaimed many hundreds of acres of abandoned surface mines. We cleaned up refuse piles. We built passive systems. It culminated with the construction of the Hollywood AMD treatment plant, which probably a lot of you are aware of. And the lower 33 miles of Bennett Branch was, on the 303D list or the impaired waters list, and ended up getting delisted. And the Fish Commission actually stocks it now. So, it's pretty rewarding to work on that. It was a project that came around at a good time. Growing Greener had a lot of funding and they weren't granting it all out. So they directed a lot of it to BAMR. And we were able to take a lot of that and put it on the ground in this Bennett Branch restoration. I saw a stream that was completely dead. I mean, really, the lower part of that stream was devoid of any aquatic life. And a lot of the feeder streams had native trout. And, they were stuck in the trib. They couldn't get in the main stem. But, once all that work was done and the AMD plant went online, it flipped and it became alkaline. And it's pretty amazing how fast the stream how fast the stream recovered. That's the one thing that's amazed me when you do change the conditions of these streams. That it isn't like you have to wait 10 years for these things to come back. It's amazing how fast they recover and the aquatic life comes back. So that's probably one of the most rewarding projects that I worked on during my time at Bammer, and was very, satisfied to see how that turned out.
Well, we're hoping to see that maybe Hollywood moves into the next level of critical earth elements and rare earth elements findings if that project continues with some of our partners that we've talked with in Grow Rural PA and others that are out there working on that in the Clearfield County area. So that's going to be interesting to see where things go moving forward. And just you mentioned real quickly about the remining, and it's something I think that many of our audience might not know what that terminology is. And for those that don't know, I know EPCAMR, we're in support of a lot of the remining efforts that go on in the anthracite region because of the fact if they are going back into old abandoned mine sites and they are going to get other coal that may be reserves that are left, when they come out, they have to meet the standards of the surface mining law under their permit, under their Title V permit. So they are cleaning up something that might not otherwise be reclaimed at all. And the pit would stay there, and there would be no spoil, and there would be no way to recover that or do the restoration of the stream to bring that particular section of a watershed back. Am I correct in kind of saying that, Eric, as far as what remining is?
Yeah, it's going into areas that were previously mining that may have some coal resources left, and the coal may be, actual in-place coal, or it could be coal refuse material that has fuel value, but basically remining those areas to recover whatever remaining coal resources are there. And then as part of that remining, they do proper reclamation and maybe even some additional work, like we talked about Falcon in addition, that takes a site that's producing bad water and not only reclaims it, but stops the bad water from coming off of it. So those can be real win-win projects. And as I noted, there's a lot more work than can be done than the state can ever do. So involving the industry as a partner, I think, is a good thing for the industry and for Pennsylvania for the annual program.
Yeah. Well, it's something we have to do, and it's not so much as a compromise as it's a path forward, and it's the way we can get access to even a lot of the abandoned mine lands and also the abandoned mine discharges that are on their properties that they don't have liability for because of the surface mining law. So we need to keep those positive relationships with a lot of our operators here in eastern and western Pennsylvania as well. So what we'd like to do here is, as a paid sponsor, at our sort of highest level, we want to thank TetraTech and give you an opportunity here to give us a little bit more background on the kind of services that you provide. And we appreciate the ad that you have provided to us that's been produced by TetraTech. And we're going to play that, and then maybe you could tell us a little bit about TetraTech and some of your projects that you're working on right now, and you will hope to be getting involved with in the near future, if that's okay. So we'll take a moment and feature that particular ad. Dan?
For 60 years, TetraTech has applied the most advanced science and latest technology to help clients solve critical problems. We leverage our leading with science approach to manage the full life cycle of mine closure and reclamation, specializing in the treatment of acid mine drainage and reclamation of abandoned mine lands. Our Pittsburgh operations have successfully assessed, planned, and designed AMD and AML solutions throughout Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana. Technical experts, regional knowledge, extensive experience. We can act quickly to develop innovative solutions that provide the best value for our clients. TetraTech, leading with science for 60 years.
Thanks. You probably recognize some of those, a lot of anthracite sites in there you might recognize there, Bob.
Sure do.
But I came to TetraTech at the beginning of 2022. I've been here for over 4 years now. It's hard to believe. I've worked to assemble a qualified and competent staff to take on just about any AML or AMD project that's out there. We have a number of ex-OSM employees on our team, a number of ex-state AML folks on our team, and we're working to deliver sound reclamation projects for states. We're working in 6 different states, as was highlighted on that video, and we're also working for NGOs and local government entities, also folks that are getting those AML, AMD grants that you had mentioned. In Pennsylvania, we're working in a number of watershed restoration projects similar to what was done in the Bennett branch. We designed the Blacklick Creek AMD treatment plant. We're still working with PADEP to fully commission that plant, get it online and working correctly. We're working in Redstone Creek in Fayette County. We're working in the Lower Moshannon Creek in Clearfield and Center County. We're designing the Little Conemaugh mine drainage treatment plant in Cambria County. That's something that I had the opportunity to work some on when I was still with DEP. So I'm very interested in seeing that project get all the way to the finish line and get that plant online. I think it'll make a big difference for the Little Conemaugh River and the folks that live particularly in Johnstown and on downstream to see the results of that. And we're working in the Shamokin Creek watershed in Northumberland County, another watershed that's just got a lot of AMD problems. I mean, it's very difficult to address, but they have a really committed group, and I think they will make some progress there. And I think if they stay with it, they'll be successful in cleaning the Shamokin Creek up through downtown Shamokin. And if you've ever been to Shamokin and seen the Shamokin Creek in downtown there, you would know that it is impacted by AMD because it's that tomato soup orange most of the time. We're working on AML projects that cover the full gamut of types. We're doing coal refuse pile reclamation, abandoned surface mines, mine openings, mine fires. We have a mine fire in Kentucky. We're looking at another one in PA, some subsidence prone areas in residential areas, landslides in Kentucky, stream reconstruction in Kentucky, and others. So I'm looking forward to seeing all these projects make it to the finish line and hopefully work on many more.
Yeah, and you're able to do all of that from Texas, so that's pretty amazing too. How often do you think you have to fly back here to do that?
I come back as needed for meetings or project things or conferences like your AMD conference every year. I look forward to that. But my staff is situated there, and with the technology we have, I still meet with them pretty regularly, just like we're talking right now, and I've been able to guide it from here, and it's worked well. So
awesome.
Good.
Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
I was going to say, I know we get a little lag time sometimes in our podcast here, but we'd like to kind of, I think maybe Ian might have been almost to our thunder here, but we wanted to kind of close out each of the episodes with a piece of advice that, our leaders have to offer, and our community leaders have to offer to our nonprofit groups and our watershed groups, respect to their, continued capacity and, the support of continuing to move forward with these types of projects to be sustainable. Do you kind of have any words of wisdom after all the years you've put in on both the public side and now on the private side to help them or think about what should they be doing that can continue to keep them strong and keep them motivated to doing the work that we're all a part of here?
Well, sure. I mean, I've worked with a lot of groups over the years, and some groups are stronger than others for a variety of reasons. But my advice would be is if you have an interest in cleaning up a watershed or dealing with some other AML problems in an area, and put together a group, an environmental group or a watershed group, is a couple of things. One, you have to educate yourself on these programs. And I know they can be complicated and seem overwhelming, but the second piece of advice I would have is that you need to be patient and you need to be persistent. So, you're not going to get a watershed cleaned up in, a month after you start. It's usually a long and sometimes uncomfortable or tough process, but if you stay with it, it certainly can be done. And there's lots of examples of it being done in Pennsylvania, and with the amount of funding that's available now, there's probably, it's maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity to see most of the major discharges in PA and watersheds that are impaired, restored to some degree or completely restored. I think you need to keep an open line of communication with, the state in particular, but, also with, consulting firms, other funders that may provide, match money if you need it, and just other stakeholders. You just have to kind of stay committed to all that. As I said, I've seen some pretty amazing projects and success stories over the years. Watersheds I thought would never be restored, or mostly or completely restored now, since many have been delisted, and it can be done. So if you want to do it, I don't think there's anything there that will stop you.
Yeah. Well, I guess that brings us kind of to the end of our podcast. So we really want to take this opportunity to thank you for all of the years of your public service and partnership with us on projects. And thank you for joining us on today's podcast so we get to know you a little bit better. And we look forward to working with TetraTech into the future.
Well, thank you guys very much. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Eric. And everybody else, please tune in for the first Friday of every month at 12 noon for a new episode of our Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles. And I think we have some interesting guests lined up, and we'll be putting that out. So follow us on our YouTube channels and also our Facebook social media, or feel free to join our Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation group on social media on Facebook too, if you want to follow what's happening around the state here and throughout Appalachia on this issue of abandoned mine reclamation and legacy coal mining here in Pennsylvania and throughout the nation. So thank you for appearing today, Eric. We really appreciate it. And Ann, if you want to give a quick reminder about future potential advertising spots, you could do that.
Yeah. We still have advertising sponsorship opportunities for the podcast. Like TetraTech did today, we have a few different levels, and our highest level gets you a minute-long commercial plus a sales pitch, to tell us about what projects you're working on. So we'd love to have some more partnerships like that. You can find the information at EPCAMR's store, epcamr.com, and link to the store. And that's it. We have to see everybody again.
Give me a call if you need some help.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yep.
Thanks,
Take
Eric.
care.